What?
Phones off? Tomorrow. Really?
Well, good morning, everyone. I'd like to welcome you to the Cook County Board of Commissioners regular meeting today, Tuesday, July 25th. And if we would please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. So as we look at this morning's agenda, are there any adjustments or changes to our agenda? Any adjustments to the agenda? If not, is there a motion to approve our agenda?
I make a motion to approve the agenda.
Thank you, Commissioner White. Is there support?
Support.
Thank you, Commissioner Starley. We have a motion and support. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. All right, we do have a hearing coming up at 9 a.m., so we're going to jump to our auditor's item, which is changes to the county miscellaneous fee schedule. Auditor Powers.
Madam Chair?
Yes.
Did
I'd
we,
like to make a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Thank you.
did we miss public comment? I'm sorry.
Yes, we did.
Okay.
All right. Oh. All right.
Two things.
Let's go back. First,
Start again.
start over, a do-over, as they say at school. All right, so do we have a motion to approve the agenda? Commissioner Mills moved to approve. Is there a second?
The consent agenda, Madam Chair.
Right.
Yep.
All right, so we have a motion to approve the consent agenda, a second.
Second.
Thank you, Commissioner White. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. And you know, I went to bed at 9 o'clock, and I'm still like this. All right. So, 9 a.m., we have our public hearing, and now we move on to our public comment period. Are there any comments that commissioners or Administrator Yorkie you have received that need to be shared?
None, Madam Chair.
Any members of the public who are here this morning? All right, we will move on then to item 4. Auditor Powers.
Yeah, would you like to do this now or wait until just before the public hearing?
If you want to give an overview.
Sure, this is just, I'm describing the actual fee change requests made by various county departments. And you have to hold a public hearing and then vote by motion to accept any of the changes. And so these changes can only happen after the public hearing. And the 4 departments that are requested changes are the assessor, land services, the 3 departments, and recorder's office. And I could describe those now, or I could wait until we get...
Let's do the full description right before the hearing.
Yeah, okay.
All right, thank you so much. All right, on to item 6, land services. I see that Neva Maxwell is here with us this morning. Welcome, Neva. And Neva's here to talk about the Jed Smith conditional use permit that was discussed by the Planning Commission last Wednesday. Good morning.
Good morning. Thank you, Madam Chair. Good morning, Commissioners, Administrator Yerke, and Auditor Powers, and County Assistant Attorney Jean. Monson. Thank you. I'm sorry, Jean.
No worries.
Early for everybody, apparently. So yes, last Wednesday, the Planning Commission met. We had 1 conditional use permit request. This public hearing had 1 member of the public present, Mr. Ed Hedstrom, and Mr. Howard Hedstrom also commented via a written comment, both in support of the request. Essentially, it's a large accessory structure. There's no principal structure or dwelling on the property already. So due to the size, it does trigger a conditional use permit for that zoning district's conditional use requirements. The fun caveat of this one is that the applicant also lives on the adjoining parcel right next door, so if he had just combined his parcels, this would not have been required. So weird quirks of the way rules get set. So Mr. Jed Smith applied for the permit. Like I said, there's no opposition. The Planning Commission had general discussion in support of the request. He He, being the applicant, purchased the property 2 years ago, and he plans to use it for primarily personal recreational equipment. And the property's already received permits for the clearing of it. And if you're not familiar, it's located immediately across the road from Hedstrom's Lumber Company. So unanimous supports for recommended approval.
All right. Are there any questions or comments that commissioners have this morning? I can just say I've seen the cleared space, I've been to that space, and everybody seems to approve of this, and Mr. Smith will have a place to put his boat now, so I think he would be very happy if we are able to approve this. So with that, is there a motion to approve?
I'll make the motion to approve the resolution for the conditional use permit for a 5,400 square foot accessory structure or garage at 1502 Gunflint Trail.
All right, thank you, Commissioner. Is there support? Support. Thank you, Commissioner Starley. We have a motion and support. Any further discussion? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Item 7, Human Resources. And I see that Leah Ekstrom is with us this morning. Good morning.
Good morning.
She has a number of items, some policy items, and then also some job descriptions and updates for us.
I do, and if it is okay with Madam Chair, I'd like to rearrange the order just to put, I'll put the job descriptions first and then move the policy to kind of keep them together, if that's
All
okay
right,
with you.
certainly. So we'll
Okay.
begin with item B.
Yes, so I am coming forward with 3 updated job descriptions that have been completed and reviewed by employees, supervisors, and DDA, David John Associates, who we are working with to update these job descriptions. Highway accountant, which is an updated job description and an updated job grade from a 180 to 200. The deputy auditor treasurer bookkeeper, updated job description and a job grade change from a 140 to 150. And the MIS IT help desk specialist with an updated job description and no job grade change. It remains at a 150.
All right. Any questions that commissioners have for Ms. Ekstrom? Commissioner Mills.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Leah. Still going smooth with DDA, still pleased with the product and the process, and
I am, yes, yep.
Good.
They're wonderful to work with, and yeah, just working with the employees and supervisors and continue on the process, so,
great, thank you.
yeah.
And I can say from being on the Personnel Committee, we have 5 job descriptions that are in the queue right now. They're doing some initial review of 5 other positions, and then employees are reviewing a couple of positions, and there are a couple at the classification stage, and so really it's moving along really well, and it's nice to see that progress every month. So
It is.
we're getting there.
Like I said, it's a moving target, too. It's a constant change on that list of where we are in there, so
Absolutely.
it seems to be working well.
Other questions? If not, I'd entertain a motion.
Madam Chair, I'll make a motion to approve the 3 job description and job grade upgrades.
Thank you so much, Commissioner Storley. So we have a motion to approve 3 job descriptions and the 2 job grade updates. Any other remarks or questions?
Support?
All right, we have support from Commissioner Mills, so a motion and support. Any other discussion? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
All right, thank you very much. Next, then, I have some updated policies. The first one is our drug and alcohol-free workplace policy. In light of the legislative changes regarding cannabis, we took a review and a look at this policy, not job description, policy. And while there is no change, we remain a drug and alcohol-free workplace. We thought it best just to reiterate that and incorporate the word cannabis so that employees, subcontractors, temp employees, all of those are aware that is included in this drug and alcohol-free workplace. So that is the change that we made to that policy. I worked with County Attorney Hicken to review it, and, yeah, came up with those changes. So ask that we approve a slightly updated policy. And then we'll be talking with, excuse me, employees and staff just to reiterate and remind people that we remain a drug and alcohol-free workplace.
This is certainly something that all counties and a lot of cities are doing right now, trying to beat that August 1st deadline. So we appreciate all the work that you have done on this. Any further discussion, questions? If not, I'd make a motion to approve the drug and alcohol-free workplace policy.
So moved.
Thank you. And is there a second?
Support.
All right, thank you, Commissioner Storley. So we have a motion and support. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
All right, thank you very much. And then last, an updated policy, and this is regarding our Cook County Transportation Employee Drug and Alcohol Policy under the Omnibus Transportation Employee Testing Act, which is a mouthful, and is under DOT. So this is in regards to our employees that have CDL, commercial driver's license. This is a federal policy and has been updated over the last few years. It comes out of 49 Federal Code, Part 40, and we work closely with the federal motor carrier to come up with this not to come up with this policy, but to update this policy and put it in place. A couple of things that have changed over the last few years, which is why we needed to update. There is a new clearinghouse, which came to be in 2020, and that is a federal clearinghouse for people with commercial driver's license. So it's a centralized location where they register and makes it easier when you have to do background checks for CDL drivers in advance. So that was one reason that it updated. The second came on June 1st. They updated to not only allow urine specimens, but also oral specimen testing. So that was updated within the policy as well. This doesn't change our testing procedures at the Highway Department. Those all still remain the same, and the rules and regulations still remain the same as well. But updated the policy so that when we can do oral testing, it's included in there. So.
Well, thank you for that explanation. I think that's important for the public to know it's related to the CDL licensure.
Yes. Yep.
All right. Any questions?
I have a question.
Commissioner White.
How often are the drivers tested? Is it annual or upon being hired, or is it suspicion, or how often?
Yep, and to answer your question, some of those, yes. So upon hire, they have to do testing for pre-hire. Upon suspicion, yes, if there was an accident, they would also be. We also have quarterly random testing. So they get into a pool, and we work with a third party for testing. That isn't something, we don't collect specimens or test them. But we have a random quarterly testing as well. So they'll get notified every quarter at random whom has to come in.
And how many employees are in this category?
Fall under, so it's everyone with a Class A driver's license that is currently driving. I mean, if you worked, that's currently, one of our drivers and in the pool. So that would be all of our plow drivers, maintenance 2 and 3 drivers, as well as our maintenance technician, and then our maintenance supervisors in there as well our mechanics are in there because they also drive. So it's roughly 15.
Okay, thanks.
Other questions? Commissioner Storley.
Thank you for this updating. Who actually does the testing? Is the law enforcement involved, or who does it?
They are not. So we contract with a third party out of Marshfield, Wisconsin. They come up and test for us whenever we need, which is fairly common practice. We don't have anyone closer that is involved, so they're the closest ones that we can contract out with.
Thank you.
Other questions? If not, I'd entertain a motion to approve the Cook County Transportation Employee Drug and Alcohol Testing Policy.
So moved, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Commissioner Mills. Is there support?
Support.
Thank you, Commissioner White. We have a motion and support. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. And I see we have a couple of members of our HRA present. Next item on our agenda is our Housing and Redevelopment Authority fiscal year 2024 budget proposal. So we'll ask Jason Hale and Mary Somnus to come forward. And thank you both for coming this morning.
Morning.
Good morning.
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 Well, I guess it should be in your packet, I believe, the proposed levy request.
It
So,
is.
I suppose Chair Somnus and I are happy to answer any questions you might have about it. We could go line by line if you want to, but I suppose we'll just leave it up to you.
Commissioners? Commissioner Mills?
Thank you, Madam Chair. If we could just specifically talk about project development expenses and contingency, those are the biggest changes that I see that might warrant some discussion.
Sure.
Let's begin by confirming that we had a finance committee that worked with Jason on preparation of this document. I don't know if that information's been provided.
I'm not sure.
And then this has been approved by the HRA board for submission,
Correct.
just in terms
Thank you,
of
very
process.
good. Yep.
And I think that's very good for the public to know.
Mhm.
Yes, this proposal was actually generated by the Finance Committee, and then, as the chair said, approved at our meeting last week on Wednesday. So to your question, Commissioner Mills, the two things you mentioned were the contingency and then the project development expenses. Well, I'll start with the expenses for projects. We have been very fortunate, again, thanks to this body, to have American Rescue Plan Act funds, and we've been relying on those for project direct expenses. For good and bad, we're running out, which means we're have earmarked and deploying those funds for projects. That's the whole intent. So this coming year, we anticipate having not a lot left. That's the goal anyway. And so the ability to still have some funds to leverage for matches for various initiatives and direct project costs, so not administrative costs, but project costs, whether it's a wetland delineation or utility matches, whatever the thing might be. We want to make sure that we have a little bit held aside for that. And the other thing I'd mention is last year, the intent was we had made the request, the HRA did, for a $100,000 transfer from the EDA to the HRA. And so this is indicative of that intent last year, that the board was largely supportive of, and then there was a bit of a mix-up. But again, fortunately, last year we had American Rescue Plan Act dollars, so it wasn't as critical. So that's the impetus for the request on the project development expenses, to have some funds so we can do direct projects and use HRA funds for that. The contingency is also reflective of that. Last year we had a very minimal contingency, again, because we had a really healthy American Rescue Plan Act fund to pull from. And frankly, most of the things that we would use contingencies for, consultation fees, let's say Ellers, or even match dollars or whatever, things that come up, those are almost always project-related expenses. So we've been able to very fortunately go to the American Rescue Plan Act and earmark those dollars for those expenses. And we're just kind of reading the tea leaves, so to speak, here, and seeing that we won't have a lot of that left next year. The wonderful thing, of course, is contingencies are a contingency. If we don't use them, then great, we can put them directly to other project funds or what have you. But I don't think we'll be in danger of not having things to spend these project funds on. Right. So that's those two particular line items, and we'd be happy to answer any of the questions you might have.
Thank you. Yeah, and I just worry that it's not enough, and so that's, I'm just kind of wondering about how the numbers were formulated and how we might be able to project what we'll need in the future here, in the near future.
I shouldn't answer a question with a question, Commissioner,
Sure.
but I think there's some potential that we would have some carry forward from this year as well, that we would put into that category,
Yeah.
probably.
That is the hope, yes.
Yeah. I don't know what that number is, but it's
Yeah.
something more.
My suspicion is, and I'm very appreciative of it, that you're being conservative with your ask here. And I know we all appreciate that with responsibility, fiscal responsibility, but we also want to see as much housing projects get done as possible. So I just want to make sure that yes, this ask is reasonable, but is it progressive enough? And so, as long as you are not feeling hindered or hampered by this budget, I'm very supportive of it. But if you're feeling like it might cramp your style a little bit, then I have more concerns there.
Well, Commissioner, I haven't thought in terms of my style, but I will say that, as Chair Salmon said, I have all sort of set aside for 2024 I've earmarked some funds for potential projects that I think may be coming down the pipeline, and those would be expended in '24. So this is for those things that we don't know. Of course, it'd be silly of me to say, no, this will be absolutely enough, and we don't want any more funds. Of course, the more we have, the more we can do. But having said that, as you indicated before, we want to be good stewards of the public resources and the funds, and we want to make sure that we're getting all of that money out there, and then ideally we run out because we have a bunch of projects in the works, and then we have to come back the following year and say, hey, that we did some work, so we need some more funding. So yes, we're being a little conservative. Also, I'm trying to set aside those funds, a chunk of that American Rescue Plan Act dollars, in anticipation of 24 projects. But as everybody who does any sort of development or projects knows, these things can take longer, and they can, or they can happen suddenly. It's very difficult to project with a crystal ball. But this is our best guess as of right now.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
And I would just like to say I'm really appreciative that the Finance Committee thought about support staff, that as the HRA grows, as we get projects in the ground and start to look at further projects, it may come to the point where you need support, Jason, and we want to provide that because housing is our #1 concern here in Cook County. So we are very glad to see that foresight in there.
One thing, thank you, Chair Sullivan. One thing I would add to that is I also look at the support staff allocation, or this request, as a backup contingency, so like a contingency. I'm going to try to abstain and push off support staff as long as possible, because I don't want to employ anybody else if we don't need to. So if we're able to do that for the whole year of '24, fantastic. We have more funds that can go directly into project expenses. And if we do, great, we have the money set aside so we can get that help that we'll need. I would love that problem, that we just are so busy and there's so much going on that I can't do it all. That would be fantastic. But I want to kick that can as far down the road as possible.
We understand. And thank you for doing that, but thanks to the Finance Committee for making sure that piece is in there just in case. All right. Other comments from commissioners? Questions? Commissioner Story.
Thank you. I know you were on the radio this morning.
Was I?
Yes, you were.
Yes, you were.
Oh, great.
Yes.
I recorded that one, so I wasn't sure when. Okay.
I know it was in the past because they kept referring to, July 25th.
Oh, sure. Okay.
So I knew it was recorded a little bit earlier. But just a little brief update. Is everything going okay with the projects? And maybe not always on time, but just a little comment about that?
Sure, I'll give you a brief one. So we have 2 projects in the works with development agreements signed. One is for the Temperance Trails. It's called the Tofty Project, the Birch Grove property, north of Birch Grove. The second, of course, is the Switchback Village project in Grand Marais here. Both of them have the wetland delineation submitted there's a few bodies that have to do a formal review and final approval of those. Once those are done, then both are anxious to close on the property and get shovels in the ground. So I would anticipate, barring any sort of force majeure or any other sort of act of God that would intervene with their ability to do it, they would be digging in September. Both of them as well want to get the foundations and utilities and such run before the snow flies, which, as we know, could be October. It could be, like, we don't really know. So they want to get that done so they can do the envelope construction and then finishing out over the winter, ideally. So that's the plan. They're both continuing to go forward, and we're just waiting for the formal process stuff to wrap up. And then, of course, outside of those two, we're always thinking, 6 to 9 months ahead. I'm trying to get projects queued up for planning in 2024 start date at some point. So I'm looking, I would love to have the wetland delineations for a couple of projects done soon this season, so that we can show them to developers and builders for next spring, so we know what we're dealing with before they do a project. So yes, it's just a cycle, but it never stops.
Right. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Any other questions for Jason or Mary?
Madam Chair, oh,
Commissioner Mills?
Madam Chair, and thank you again. And as we've talked in the past, you're probably aware that I'm a big fan of the land trust model. I'm also a big fan of public ownership because the public control will be able to accommodate the public needs, I think, the most rather than the market. And so I know it's not been long since you've been in your position and you've gotten a lot done, but I'm just wondering if there's been any path or stones laid in this direction. I know you're saying it takes a while to get to that level of management, and so I didn't know if it's still far too early or if we can start thinking those lines. The reason I'm asking this is because as we talk about what affordable housing is or what workforce housing is, it still seems very unaffordable for me and my family and any of my peers, and so I'm trying to really think outside the box on ways that we can get out of the market and really help our community and the workforce that we have and want to bring in. So, big question. You can have a short answer.
I can start by saying that public ownership by the HRA of any housing has not been discussed by the board at all. And please add to that, if you wish.
Yeah, of course. There were two things you mentioned, Commissioner Mills. One was land trust, and then the second was public ownership. In this neck of the woods, by the way, sorry, random aside, I learned Cook County is the least densely populated county in the state. I thought that was fun. 1.6 people per square mile, which is, I think, why a lot of us love living here. So anyway, aside from that, up here, there is One Roof Community Housing is really the land trust organization. I have had conversations with them. And one of the challenges, of course, is finding the land for them to do it. So that's really what I'm working on. Every project starts with a site. They are interested in doing land trust houses here. They just need to know where, when, and then they have to apply to funding for that. Oh, go ahead.
And is the Nordic Star is
Correct.
a land trust?
Yep. So they already have that investment in town here. And again, they're open to doing more, subject to finding the right site and timing. So then I'll park that. And the second thing you asked just briefly about the public housing perspective. As the chair said, we haven't talked about it. The board has not talked about it. I have not proposed it for two main reasons. One is capacity, and two is funding. So actually the capacity, I think, is even maybe more important here, because the reality is if the HRA were to own and operate any sort of facility, unless we subcontracted out things like maintenance and leasing and all that, which is difficult to find in Cook County, period, that would probably take 40 to 60% of my time. So as of right now, the objective is to maximize other people's ability to construct and own property and get some units. Really, it's a pressure release valve and supply. Let's get some supply in the market, and then we can start thinking longer term about how we address that sort of thing in that conversation. So, I'm not. It's not that that's been turned off my brain. It's just thinking when's the right timing and how would we approach that, etc. So, yes, but patiently.
I appreciate that answer. Thank you. And
You're welcome.
And I'm sure you're aware too. Yes, I believe in the pressure relief valve. I really believe in the work that you're doing and your strategy. And I'm sure you also realize as we allow developments to happen, that weakens our land availability for potential land trust and or public housing. So it's a dance, and you get it, but I'm glad that you answered that way, and I just wanted the public to hear all that too, so thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. And one more quick thing, actually, just you remind me, Birchwood Apartments, One Roof Community Housing, been working with them for a long time now. They have submitted the formal documentation for the basically swap of ownership, so it's just a formal approval that they're waiting for, and none of us see any reason why that won't go through. They also, 2 weeks ago, I believe, submitted their Minnesota Housing Tax Credit application, which means if they'll find out, everything takes too long, but they'll find out in late November, early December, whether or not they get that award, and we're all optimistic, and if they do, then they go through the process with rural development. The USDA was the one who originally funded that, as well as a couple of other projects here. So they're on the path. The HRA actually has a grant and a deferred loan that we've provided for them to help them with this process. And then once they get the funding, then they're going to basically revitalize that entire property and maintain those 24 units. And that's a good example of leveraging our nonprofit partners who will create, I should say recreate this property and keep it for affordability for 50 plus years. So that's one sort of other way of doing it, and we are very lucky to have them interested in doing that sort of thing. So trying to maximize those opportunities while we think, like you're saying, Commissioner, longer term about public opportunities. So I just want to give an update. We've talked a lot about Birchwood in the past, off and on, and I want to update you on that. That's it.
All right, thank you. Any final questions or remarks? Well, we appreciate you coming this morning and responding to our questions and concerns and providing updates to us and the public as well. So thank you very much.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
All
And
right.
I'll just add one more thing if I can. I am, speaking for myself, so excited that the day is coming that we're going to get out the golden shovels and have a couple of groundbreaking events. So we're going to let you know and the public know as soon as possible so that people can put those celebrations on calendars and we can have a great community gathering to celebrate some milestone moments coming our way. Very excited about that.
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, thank you
for
both.
having
Thank you.
us.
Have a great day. All right, it is just a little bit after 9, time for our public hearing on proposed changes to our county fee schedule. And so we've noticed the public and indicated there would be a hearing this morning. Are there any members of the public that wish to speak?
Madam Chair, I can describe the requested changes.
Thank you, Auditor Powers.
First is the Recorder's Office asking to amend, there's a record called Ordination of Wedding Officiants, and change that fee from $10 to $20, and change the name to Certificate of Filing, Persons Authorized to Perform Civil Marriages or Credentials of Ministers, just a more longer but more accurate title. Dusty Felt. They did a survey of other counties, and the average charge for these fees, for this work, was $20 to $25. We were only charging $10. It does take a fair amount of time, so they request to update to that. The assessor requests, Rachel is here to correct me or add any other information. They just want to remove the plat book fees since the assessor's office no longer sells them, but it happens to reside on our list. And update the following services: ownership history information requests to $40 an hour and $40 minimum. They were at $30. So I think it's been a long time since that was adjusted. And then add the following services for the following fees. These are not really additions. These were on the IT section of the fee schedule, but they have removed them since they don't manage this anymore, but assessor has some need for these. So new data queries, $50. Results in electronic data, 10 cents a parcel. Results in mailing labels, 15 cents a parcel. And results in paper printout, 25 cents per side a page. That's no change to what was out there. And then the final request is land services for a modification to the addition of a boundary line adjustment, a fee of $100 per parcel. You approved this change recently. Neva's here to add any information, but the boundary line adjustment process was approved on May 23rd. Neva provided an application form in your packet, and this, prior to this, former zoning administrators processed these as administrative subdivisions, which had a fee of $500. So this is actually a reduction for many applicants. Anything you want to add to that, Neva?
All right, well, thank you for that explanation. We have no members of the public here for our hearing, and I think we've had a good explanation about the improvements, both updating and accuracy, eliminating things like the plat book, which we're not in the business of doing, and other things. So with that, is there a motion to approve the fee schedule?
So moved, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Commissioner Mills. Is there support?
Support.
Thank you, Commissioner Storley. We have a motion and support. Any further discussion? Commissioner Mills.
Just appreciate everyone looking at the fee schedule and trying to see what makes the most sense, and hope we do this annually, and we'll just stay on top of it. Thank you for your work.
All right, thank you. All right, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. We have a new fee schedule. Thank you for all your work. All right. So we will move now down to Administrator Yorkie.
Well, we are just speeding through this agenda, which is not a bad thing. Good morning, Commissioners and members of the public. The first item I have today is to set a public hearing date for the capital improvement plan. This is something that is required under Minnesota statutes for 475, 521. That we need to, we've put the draft CIP out for public review. We have collected a number of comments, which we will be posting on next week's, or not next week's, but the next meeting's agenda here in 2 weeks. But we do need to hold this hearing, and I just want to say a few things about what we are going to be asking the public to comment on, and also what we will be asking this board to act on. The draft CIP, in addition to containing a lot of detailed information about all the deferred maintenance that we have in our buildings, also proposes 3 options for adding space to address current deficits in office space for existing staff, including our HR director and HR generalist. Our public information officer does not have a permanent place. Soil and water conservation staff are working in an office space that could reasonably accommodate 2 people, I would say. We also have a shortage of space in the law enforcement center. Deputies don't have adequate workspace. We're also short on evidence processing and storage, and the Sally Port is too small to accommodate the current squads that the sheriff deputies use. And then we also had a committee of the whole meeting in June at which you heard Judge Kuzo talk about the deficits in space in the courtroom and the jury deliberation room. There are a number of needs there. And so the 3 options that were outlined all contemplate adding space either to the law enforcement center or to the courthouse or both. We had an opportunity to submit an application to the state for bonding assistance for fiscal year 2024. And on the advice of Ellers, our fiscal consultant, we focused that application on option 1 in the CIP, which is the construction of a justice center at the site of the current law enforcement center. What that would do is add space to the first story to address those needs that I just outlined for the sheriff's office, and then also add a second story for a new courtroom and offices for the county attorney, court administration, and probation. And so because that is the focus of our bonding application to the state, that is the option that I will be asking the board to approve as part of the CIP approval. So we'll hold the hearing on August 8th, and then the board could either elect to take action to approve the CIP on that same day, or if time is needed to contemplate comments that are received, we could defer approval of the CIP to August 22nd. In either case, we really need to have the plan approved by the end of August because we need to finalize our application to Minnesota Management and Budget by October 13th. So that is what this is about. And so the request today is to set August 8th as the public hearing date for the capital improvement plan.
Any questions for Administrator Yogi? Commissioner White?
What is our process for making serious decisions? I mean, what I have observed is we are asked to make decisions without all of the information in front of us before we make a decision. And now the push is on for this Justice Center, which very well would be a good solution to some of our problems, but we have not investigated other options that are out there. You know, we have not, we need storage. I think everything that they had done about for the existing buildings has great value. But what they gave us were essentially concept drawings, pretty pictures of options for the space. And then they gave us a number, which I don't know how they came up with those numbers. To get an estimate, you have to base that on something. And we have not yet, we don't get it, we don't have an opportunity as a board to sit together and talk about what are the options. I've been part of a conversation with the administrator and about other options that, just to check out if they would work or not, instead of spending the money. I mean, what does it cost to build a new building? And that would be quite an investment to figure that out, because we'd have to find out what the ground is like underneath the law enforcement center and the surrounding areas. Do we have to blast? Do we have to haul fill? What do we have to do? But then that cost compared to remodeling costs, expansion costs. Just because this courthouse is on the National Register, Historic Register, does not mean one cannot do approved modifications on the inside and give Judge Kuzo they definitely, after that walkthrough with the judge, there's a real need for more space in the courthouse. And so if that were an option, then what would reconfiguring the courthouse upstairs to better accommodate the entire legal part of our county be? And then, what would that cost be? We need to make decisions based on cost. We're not spending our own money. The consequences of my decisions only impact me in my own personal life, and I win or lose sometimes, but we're dealing with our community's tax dollars, and we need to explore everything that is out there. And yes, we're going to be spending money, absolutely. We can't provide services without spending money, but we have to make certain how we spend the monies is cost effective. Is this the one? And, just because everybody else is getting a new justice center doesn't mean we have to have a new justice center, which is, I have seen those, and those would really be the cat's meow to have. But can we afford it? Can we long-term afford it? Obviously, we've not been able to afford deferred maintenance on 50 buildings, and now we're talking about adding another building. So this is a great concern about our process. Information comes to us, we have to make a decision now, and we don't get the information. So go ahead, I'm done.
So Commissioner, one thing I would say is, for me, I have tried to talk to a variety of departments. I've done ride-alongs with individuals in the Sheriff's Department. We've visited with Judge Kuzo. I've tried to visit with people in Public Health and Human Services. I look at my job as going out and visiting with departments, visiting to find out what are the needs, what can they get by with, what do you see a vision for 20 years from now? Because we're not planning just for today or tomorrow, but we're planning for the long term. You look at population growth in Cook County, and you have to think about how is that going to impact the highway department? How is that going to impact law enforcement? And so trying to ask those questions about the future is one of the things that I spend my time with. I don't know, with other commissioners, if you'd like to respond or react to how you're approaching decision-making. Commissioner Mills.
I guess I'm not entirely, it's not entirely clear what the, we're talking about a lot of money. It's not clear to me where in this process you see gaps.
Have we explored other options besides building onto the law enforcement center? Have we explored the cost of doing something different? And how much square footage we might acquire or not acquire, and the longevity of the buildings and those numbers can be are out there to be gathered, and it would be quite an effort. But they're there, just like the consultants came and did what seems to me a really excellent job of providing costs for fixing things that have been left for 20-some years, if that number's correct. So if we're going to now add another building, and in the last 20 years, we couldn't manage to help keep those upgraded, yes, we're going to upgrade them, and now they'll be great. But it doesn't mean they're going to be great in perpetuity. It means we're going to have to do constant maintenance on anything, including the new building that is built.
Okay. Yeah, so thank you for clarifying. And so what I'm hearing you say a number of different things. When I hear new building, I think new footprint, I think raw land, I think building a building. So in this plan, there is no new building. It is an expansion of all those other buildings. Part of the reason why our deferred maintenance has built up and compounded over the years is an unwillingness of past boards to properly fund the maintenance department. What our capital improvement plan does is it attempts to address our immediate needs, our deferred needs, as well as putting a plan in place for those future maintenance costs. So this is all inclusive of all of it. And as far as the different options are concerned, we did look at, 1, 2, and 3, or A, B, and C, or whatever, and one of those did not, or two of those did not build out the Justice Center there.
Right.
It was just an addition onto the courthouse. And so we've looked at those different costs, and like you said, they didn't get into the nitty-gritty necessarily, but it is done by a professional, and they did have some pretty accurate numbers, just knowing the landscape and us being up to the end of the road. So considering those numbers and those options, and looking at, as Commissioner Sullivan said, what our long-term needs are likely to be, I think we've done a pretty good look around. I know also we have looked at other buildings off-site that are not owned by the county, and so then some of the costs looked at there were the cost of the purchase of that, the cost of the renovation of that, and then also just the loss of tax rolls, because once it goes from private to public, then we don't collect on that. So there's lots of factors, as well as just the dynamics of the organization, what works the best for people.
Okay, and so when you say we have looked at other buildings that are privately owned at this moment, I don't recall looking or hearing about those different buildings, and what I have no.
There has not been public discussion about that, but we have done some reconnaissance behind the scenes to look at other options.
And so should that not be shared with those of us that have to make the decision, even if that's not public?
I think on the building committee had discussions, and when you're talking about land sales and purchasing, you don't want to show all your cards, right?
Right.
So there's a strange dynamic there. I think we could generally say that we've looked at property that was a large, significant parcel that was in the $1 million range, and to try to factor in all of the additions and renovations and parking. It just became obvious. I thought it became obvious, like, we could make it work, but is this cost effective? No. So
and that's, I mean, so I should just trust you.
And
I'm sorry, I would like to be part of that conversation or hear it and see the numbers, because we're talking about putting, and I'm focusing on the second floor on the law enforcement center, because if that were to go, that seems to be the most sensible of the other options that were there, if indeed that is what is needed. But I am being asked to make a decision without knowing what everybody else knows,
No.
number-wise. Because, and I don't know if
That's
there's a
not,
building out
that's
there.
actually not true. You're not being asked to make a decision right now. And so the whole, first of all, Commissioner, I mean, I shared with you.
Oh, and I want to tell everyone
I'm-
listening,
I'm
audience out there,
speaking- I'm
I need to
speaking,
apologize to you.
You do.
And I
Because-
am,
Because
right
you
now.
asked me for information.
And I did get it.
About
and it
all
was-
of our buildings, which
Yes.
I sent to you, and you didn't realize that I had sent it to you, because it was in a spreadsheet, and you are unfamiliar with spreadsheets.
Right, and for
So
that, I'm
So I just want to
apologizing.
make clear that I did provide that information.
And I'm
so
telling the world.
If there's can I finish?
Yes, you may.
So if there's a perception in the public that somehow I'm withholding information from this board, that is not the case.
That is not the case. World, that is not the case. He's not withholding information. I didn't realize that he sent me, it was in Excel, and there was the information for some of them, but then big open space, and I had to keep scrolling down, and there's page 2 or page 3, and I was unaware of that. So, my mistake, and he's not withholding information. But if there has been discussions about other buildings, these, as Commissioner Mills just said, I'd like to know about that somewhere. And I
We have
understand that
not-
you have to keep that quiet for the,
That's correct, and we have not had an opportunity to have
Okay.
that discussion publicly.
okay?
And I guess to that point, it's like, where do you draw the line? Do you want all of the board to go down all the pipe dreams that I have for all of the different possibilities? Like, at some point, I need to cull different options from my pipe dreams. What is practical? What's realistic? What's worthy of sharing with the board? We don't want to just scattershot everything to the board. We want to present options that are feasible and viable to the board. And so when we explore an option that becomes pretty clearly not feasible for viable, you still want that presented to the board?
I think the public would like to know that this board has looked outside the box and looked at all the different options. And some would be like, "Ugh, that would never work," and other ones would be, well, why not? And then you say, oh, well, we'd have to blast, and that would cost,
Sure,
you just,
yeah.
but you would see it, you would get to know, because we're talking about spending 24 million, I don't remember what for, is that what the,
Regardless of the number.
right. So to do an upgrade on an existing building and the parking lot and whatever it would cost, would be less than, well, we have to then take out the free $8 million. I get that. But you can mathematically do that.
Right, yeah. And to my,
And the public, Commissioner, the public really, it's in your own household. You don't want to have to do this, you get along, you make it do, and then at some point, you're going to have to do a new roof. Are you going to do asphalt that will last X number of years? Are you going to do metal? Which way are you going to go? You have to make those decisions, but you look at the numbers, and then you decide, and it hurts one way or the other.
that's exactly right. And by my estimation and my conversations with the public and my explaining things to people who have come forward asking questions, these options that we've been looking at are the most viable and best supported based on the data that we've received and the analysis that we've gotten. And so it's not as if we're not engaging the public, not reaching out to the public, not talking with the public, not explaining to the public. Maybe not, I'm not doing that in District 5, or District 5. But for the individuals that come to me, I certainly have those conversations. So
And that was, I would assume that.
yeah, and that's where I come to the conclusion, like, all right, we've got our consultants, we've had our engagement, we've had concerns brought up about space needs and long-term costs, and in my estimation, I think this capital improvement plan is going to be the best route forward. And like you say, it's going to cost some dollars, but I do believe in the long run it's going to serve our community the best, both financially and with the services it'll provide. So if there's more specifics you want to talk about, I think it's worthwhile talking about it as a board, because this is the time to do that.
Well, but I don't want to jeopardize.
Right.
I mean, I understand real estate sales and things
Yeah.
like that, so that would not be, I mean, perhaps Administrator Yorkie can tell me just
Sure.
about the one cost.
Okay.
But any one of us, I mean, we should all be discussing these with our constituents and with each other to make sure that we have all the information. I know I get a lot of questions when I go to Lake Association
Right.
meetings, and those are 30 to 50 people every time who are asking questions about the CIP, about what direction the levy might be taking, all those kinds of things. And we get, in addition to a lot of questions, a lot of feedback. So I do think we've done a good job of public engagement, besides just what's on the website and those types of things, and those discussions here in the meetings. I'd like to get back to the question at hand.
I just
Commissioner
have a couple
Storley.
comments.
Yeah.
So I think this is a fine example of process in government, and I do rely on committees, as the building committee, to meet and discuss and come up with some suggestions. We don't have them right now, but they're in addition to what we already have. I think because I'm lucky that I have the 3 townships, I'm looking at the date here, and I'd like to further discuss moving it out, because I have 3 townships coming up in August that I will be going to, because I think we need one more explanation and understanding, and the fact that we're having a public comment period, that they, and I know we've had that on the line, and I know we've done all that, but I think to be effective, they need to know one more push as to why we're doing what we're doing, or considering what we're doing. It's summer, people are on vacation. I know I've missed a lot of people. I don't have a lot coming to the township meetings, but I may have to say, discussion will be on capital improvements, 7 o'clock in Schroeder, and in Tofty, and in Lutzen. Because I think that if they know they've had a chance to do the survey, they have another explanation, and they can come to the public hearing, I feel then that we have done all we can do to explain as to why we're doing this. And we had this, 5, 6 years ago, we had a public meeting, room was full, it didn't go anywhere. I want this to go someplace. So, that's my thoughts right now.
Commissioner Mills.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Commissioner Storley. Are you saying that the townships won't have an opportunity to meet before August 8th?
Right.
Okay, so you would prefer the hearing be maybe August 22nd as the
That would be the
following?
second suggestion here.
Yeah, and Administrator Yorkie, how does that fit in your world? Considering it was June 26th or 27th, that was the original.
Right. First of all, Commissioner Storley, I understand what you're saying, and I want to give everybody who is interested in providing comment on this to be able to do so. I think doing it, having the hearing on August 22nd would be feasible. It does kind of create a tighter timeline for getting things finalized for the October 13th deadline to MMB. But it's still doable.
Okay.
Remember when we stressed you out by?
Yeah, I remember.
Yeah. Is it a similar level?
No, I think it's workable. It's workable.
Okay.
Well, considering Commissioner Storley's specific concerns with the townships, I think having that defined date is pretty reasonable if you can make that work.
Yes.
Myself, I want to accommodate
I appreciate it.
any parties that want to discuss more beforehand, just a little extra, as you said.
One other thing that I want to make really clear is that my work on this has been to really try to figure out how to minimize the cost to local taxpayers. And that is why we've submitted the bonding application to the state. In doing the comparison that we were talking about, looking at local options, that would not be covered by state bonding. In other words, going on our own and just using our own, issuing our own bonds to pay for some option that would be less expensive in aggregate. That would be more expensive to county taxpayers than if we did get the bonding and went with option one. And so that, based on that, that's why I'm saying we should pursue option one with the hope that we can get the state financing. Now, if the bond application is not successful, then I think we'd have to have another conversation. This is not, this is not something where the board approves the plan and then we just don't ever make any changes to the plan as we implement it. We're going to have to make adjustments. That's with any plan, that's true. But I think in terms of providing the best value to Cook County taxpayers, securing state bonding and going with option one is going to be the lowest cost alternative.
Commissioner Mills.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Mr. York, for pointing that out. It was my understanding, even if we do get the bonding, we will have more conversations about the path that we want to choose.
For sure.
Specificity, so.
Right.
So either way, this is just setting the hearing date. And
that's correct.
Yeah.
And there are going to be multiple decision points. Bruce Kimmel presented our financial management plan at the last meeting or meeting before last. And so, we are going to have to issue our own bonds in any case. What the level of funding is that we need when we do that is an open question at this point. But this board is going to have to make additional decisions about how much debt to issue, when that's going to happen, and so on. And so this is not, setting this hearing date, first of all, is just setting a hearing date. But approving the CIP ultimately does not constrain us to blindly following that plan if there's a need to make course corrections as we move forward.
Commissioner White.
I would like to meet with Administrator Yorkie, and you can show me the numbers on what you've just, the other options. Just because I want to be able to honestly go talk to my constituents and say, no, we have tried this, it's not cost effective because, and name it. Spell it out by item, why not? Because it's their money and it's our trust. Our trust, their trust. Trust is a hot commodity that we kind of need to get. So that's what I would like to do, Administrator. And so,
Of course.
and that would then prove to me that indeed, I'd like to have a brand new house too, but, sometimes you don't get to have everything you want to have, but we do need to provide services. So, okay, I'm done.
So it looks like we are looking for a motion to approve setting a public hearing for the CIP on Tuesday, August 22nd at 9 a.m. here in the Commissioners' Room. Is there a motion?
Madam Chair, I'll make that motion.
Thank you, Commissioner Storley. Is there support?
Support.
Thank you, Commissioner Mills. We have a motion and support. Any further discussion? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, our hearing is set for Tuesday, August 22nd.
Thank you, everyone.
Good discussion.
All right. Can we take a short break?
We shall do that. So we'll have Jana
Dying
take
of thirst.
and put information up on our screen to the public that we're going to take a short break, and we will be back in 10 minutes. Welcome back, everyone, to our Board of Commissioners meeting today, July 25th, and we are on item 9B at this point. Administrator Yorkie.
All right, thank you, Madam Chair. So in your board packet is a summary of the draft fiscal year 2024 budget. I'm going to start with a few pieces of really good news, and this is not new information, I don't think, for this board, but just to remind the public. In the last legislative session that concluded in May, we were, and by we, I mean the counties of Minnesota, thanks to the Association of Minnesota Counties, were successful in getting funding increases in a number of revenue sources. And that's going to help us in what is going to be a fairly challenging budget year. We saw increases in county program aid, and then we also had an increase in the rate that Minnesota, I'm having a flashback. I'm not in Missouri anymore. But I see MDNR, and that's what I think. So Minnesota Department of Natural Resources, payments in lieu of taxes, that rate went up from $2 an acre to $3 an acre. We have also seen a slight increase in revenue from the federal government for our Section 6902 PILT payments, which is not the same as Ty Blatnick, and I'll talk more about that in a minute. Other things that are notable about this year's budget is we do have some requests for additional resources for staffing in the county attorney's office. We do have the proposal to add a sheriff's deputy position, which actually will be close to cost neutral because we already had money budgeted for a position that was vacant. And then we are also going to have a new position in land services. That is the short-term rental compliance officer. And that one is actually not going to put any additional burden on the levy because it will be paid for by the fees that we're charging for registering short-term rentals. The other thing, as usual, we have assumed a 10% increase in health insurance premiums for next year. We don't have the actual rates yet and won't have those until sometime in August, possibly not until the end of August, but we're putting that 10% placeholder in with the hope that the actual increase will be less than that. When you look at the net of all revenues and expenses in the 24 general fund budget proposal, there's a net increase of 4.5% over 2023. But that's not to say that the levy request for the general fund will be 4.5 because we did use fund balance last year to offset the salary increases that resulted from the wage study. And so I'll talk more about the potential levy impacts in a moment. Wanted to talk a little bit about, in more detail, about the increases in revenue. So county program aid went up by a little over $158,000 a year. The MDNR payment in lieu of taxes, Brady, I saw your article said it was about 130 some, and I think the figure I saw from AMC was closer to like 200,000. So,
Yeah.
and I'm not sure what accounts for that difference, but
Some of that is, parts of it goes into parks
okay.
and trails. So it's something that we have to consider that we could offset some costs with that.
Gotcha.
Potentially.
Okay.
But then there's some that are clearly for just like levy help.
Okay.
So
Okay.
that's just,
so the
that's,
130
yeah,
is-
and that part I put right into
Yeah.
Department 822.
Okay.
But
Great. We are also getting a one-time payment in public safety aid, and this is a new category of assistance that, again, it's one time, it's going to be paid in 2023. We have not reflected that revenue in the 2024 budget. So that will also help out, but that's, again, very specific to the sheriff's office. The increase in the federal PILT, again, the Section 6902 payment, that's about $94,500. We are still awaiting results of the Boundary Waters reappraisal under the Ty-Blatnick Act to see what our future payments are going to be. Just as a reminder, after the 2008 appraisal, the county was receiving in the neighborhood of $2 million a year for the Boundary Waters. And in the 2018 reappraisal, that amount would have been reduced to about, $1.3 million. We have basically been setting aside, since that reappraisal, we've been setting aside the increment, and that is about $700,000 a year.
Closer to 6, but
Okay.
details.
Okay. So $600,000 a year for the possibility that we might have to pay that money back to USDA. So we're still, and we thought that we were going to hear back from USDA in May, and we have not. And so I have been in contact with our federal legislators to see if there's any new information that they can share about that. If we come out on the good side of that decision, it would certainly help us a lot in terms of the levy impact of the current budget. But we don't have that number yet. With any luck, the board will be asked to set the preliminary budget and levy on September 12th. And we're hoping that before then, we have some resolution as to what is going to be the outcome of the agriculture decision on the Boundary Waters. So, and then the other thing to note is that we still have about $1.3 million in the local assistance and tribal consistency fund allocation. That was the roughly $2 million over 2 years that we were notified about roughly a year and a half ago. So, so in terms of the overall levy impact, Brady and I are still working through that. We're also, you have not yet heard the presentations from Public Health and Human Services and the Highway Department. Those are separate funds from the general fund. And all of those work together to determine what the county levy is going to be, in addition to like the HRA levy and a few other categories of expenses. So anyway, just wanted to talk through the new staffing requests. The county attorney is proposing the addition of a new full-time assistant county attorney. Over the last year, approximately, the county attorney's office has really been burdened with the resumption of trials post-COVID. They've had, Gene, how many is it now? Like 6 major trials this year so far, I think it is. And so that has really put a heavy demand on staff. And the result of that has been that anything that is not trial-related has been slowed down. So contracts that have to be reviewed and approved by the county attorney from a number of departments, from my office, from the Board of County Commissioners, that review process is slowed down. And this is not at all, by the way, a criticism of the county attorney's office. They just have a tremendous workload right now. And so the new assistant county attorney, according to my conversation with Molly, would focus on criminal trials, and that would free up some of her time to focus more on the work of the board and the departments. So that's one request. I mentioned the sheriff's office proposing the addition of a deputy, and this is where doing FTE budgeting, I think, is going to be useful, because we budget for positions in the fiscal budget, but we don't actually have a separate FTE budget. And it's useful, I think, for everybody to have an FTE budget so that we know what positions have been approved by the board. And we've had conversations before about the creation of new positions with grant funding and concerns about what potential ongoing costs the creation of those positions could cause. And so I think it is going to be useful, and this is something that we're proposing as part of our strategic plan that we're developing, to incorporate FTE budgeting as part of our fiscal budgeting process, so that we can maintain a better handle on kind of what positions have been approved by the board and what the budget for those positions is. So, so I mentioned the sheriff's deputy position. The issue there is that right now, they've been short-staffed for a long time, and especially with the trials that have been going on, they've had a lot of overtime. And in fact, currently, the trial that has been moved to St. Louis County is diverting both the county attorney's staff and the sheriff's office staff to Duluth. And again, that puts a burden on folks who are left here to do the work of those departments. So, in my opinion, both of these positions are, there's a clear need for them, and so I would really support efforts to approve those. The other position I mentioned is the short-term rental compliance officer. Again, the board approved the increase in fees for registering a short-term rental, sufficient to cover the full cost of that expense. So that's not something that will be put on the general fund. Those are kind of the major new staffing requests. We do have increases in line items across the budget. The summary shows by department what those increases are. That's basically it. I didn't want to go into a whole lot of detail today. We are going to be doing some additional work to see if there are places where we can cut costs. I've been working both with the Highway Department and I know Public Health and Human Services. They are still awaiting information on new reimbursement rates that will impact their levy request this year. And so there's still some time to work on finalizing costs. And again, you will be getting presentations both from Highway and Public Health and Human Services at the beginning of next month, so that we can start putting the big picture together. In terms of what the levy request will be for the general fund, it really hinges on how much fund balance we're proposing to use, and then also how much of those ARPA dollars, the local assistance and tribal consistency fund dollars, that we're going to use to offset the levy increase. And we've looked at a number of different scenarios, but we haven't really landed on a final recommendation to offer today. So with that, I will pause and see if there are any questions. Thank you.
Commissioner Storley.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So Administrator Yorkie mentioned that our health increase is 10%. That's with the Medica that we've continued with. Was there any outreach, or is there any possibility of looking at other options?
Our current agreement with the Northeast Service Co-op is going to be in effect next year. And they have not, we changed providers last year. We used to have Blue Cross Blue Shield. They put out a request for proposals, and based on that process, selected Medica as our new insurer. I don't recall offhand what the term of that arrangement is, but I do know that Medica will be our provider next year as well.
There wasn't a commitment to like 2, 3, 4 years? Goes year by year?
Again, I'm not, Brady, do you recall the term of that agreement? I don't recall.
I don't.
Okay. So,
Yeah.
but it's not something, because we are members of a cooperative, it's not something that the county can independently just go out and look for new insurance on its own.
Yeah, I know they go out every 5 years, but I'm not sure how tied, if you could make a change.
They came in at a nice percentage.
The first
The
year,
first year.
we actually had a decrease in premiums, so that's very unusual.
It is, yeah. Okay, thank you.
Other questions the commissioners have? I know as I think about the additional positions, for example, the one in the county attorney's office, I've noticed that just contracts, easements, working on ordinances, things like that, it takes longer because of all the jury trials that everyone is preparing for. So I really see the need and have felt that in a number of the committees and groups that I work with, and as well as the sheriff's office. Again, confirmed not only from the discussions that I've had with Sheriff Eliason and his chief deputy, Will Sandstrom, but also through conversations on the ride-alongs, and really important to make sure we're well-staffed and meeting our community's needs. Commissioner Mills?
Yeah, just one thing I wanted to point out in the library's budget. The library board approved a budget of $246,000 for 2024. The city council has not yet approved that, but that's an increase of about 6.8% instead of the 4% that's in here. So I just want to make you aware of that, Administrator York.
Yeah, that was a placeholder I put.
Yeah, no, there's no way of you knowing. I just wanted to try to keep you
Appreciate that.
up to snuff here as much as possible. Also, I was hoping that us commissioners could have a discussion about commissioner salary before the end of the year. So sooner the better in my mind. Last year, we increased our salary by $3,600 per commissioner. Originally, I had compiled a spreadsheet looking at commissioner salaries across the state and just our history as Cook County, and thought we should increase it by $12,000 each. Last year, that was not appetizing for the board, and so there was a lot of discussion, and eventually came to the compromise of $3,600, which is an easy $300 a month. And so I still have that target with staying on par with other areas around the state, and staying on par with inflation, as well as health insurance costs for us commissioners. And so that is my target, but recognizing that we can't do everything all at once. I think at a very minimum, we should adjust for inflation, but I think, again, doing that $3,600 increase per commissioner salary would be another way to go about it. So that's not going to have a drastic impact on our budget, but it is important to be as accurate and transparent as possible. So I wanted to make that plug sooner than later.
Thank you for doing that, and I agree that kind of an incremental approach is appropriate. And as you know, I've been looking also at the workloads of commissioners kind of in relationship to that. And so I think, as you say, prior to the end of the year, a lot of work to do in that area and discussion to be had. Commissioner Storm.
Thank you. So are you saying incrementally we go $3,600 till we get to the 12?
Well, by that point, it's going to be 5 more, so it's like chasing the tail there. But that seemed like a reasonable ask to kind of stay on that track. And then, I don't know, I'm going to keep that spreadsheet updated, and I can share that as, before the end of the year, before we have to make a decision.
It might be helpful for Commissioner White, since she wasn't here when we were looking at that information, to have that in advance, or maybe
Sure, yep.
you could forward
The
last year's,
unupdated,
just
yeah.
to
Thank
update
you.
you.
Yep, I'll do that, yep. Good suggestion.
Madam Chair, I was just going to add speaking of pay increases, so we did, or the board did approve honoring the 3.5% cost of living adjustment for '24. That was something that was in the contracts that we negotiated for '23 through '24. And after we did the salary survey, the board elected to honor that increase that was negotiated for 2024. So that is part of this proposal as well.
Thank you for clarifying that. Other question or comments?
I'd just point out one thing. When you're looking through this, you'll see a difference in jail budget reduction, and then a bigger increase in the sheriff's department than you might expect. That's just largely a budgeting change on Pat's part. He had a deputy split 50-50 with the jail and sheriff's department, and he's ended that. So that 50% deputy in the jail is gone, so you'll see a lower expense by about $30,000. That additional 50% expense is in Department 200, just a shift.
Okay,
where
thank you
those
for
are.
clarifying that. Other questions or remarks? Seeing or hearing none?
Oh, Well, thank you,
Commissioner
Madam.
Mills.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Administrator Yorkie, are you looking for any more specific feedback or direction at this point?
Well, the point of doing this presentation, when we're still fairly early in the process, is to give the commission an opportunity to provide feedback on proposed new spending, to ask questions about any of the line items in the budget. And so to the extent that members of this board have questions or concerns, I know we haven't had an opportunity for the county attorney and for the sheriff to come in to talk about why they're requesting what they are. Again, they are tied up with the current trial, which kind of demonstrates the point that we are understaffed. But if there are additional questions, yes, the purpose of presenting this information now is to give you all an opportunity to provide feedback so that we can take that and refine the budget proposal in preparation for the approval of the preliminary levy and budget in September.
Go ahead.
So thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Minister Yorkie. So to be clear, this draft budget, first look at the budget, does not include fund balanced expenditure from the general fund.
It does not.
It also does not include expenditure of the 1.3 remaining ARPA dollars.
So, right,
yeah,
and so there's a separate sheet that we will present after we have had the presentations from Highway and Public Health and Human Services. That shows, it's a one-pager, and it just shows like how much fund balance we're using across all three major funds, any use of the ARPA dollars, and that will then give us the picture of what the total levy increase for next year would be. And so, no, that's not, we don't have that today because those numbers are still very much in flux.
Yeah, and Human Services is hopefully, they're still getting the finals from the legislative changes this year, so they're hoping to put more revenue into their budget and lower their impact, but they don't know it yet.
Yeah.
And, yeah, I guess that's it.
Well, in my opinion, considering we're not spending from the fund balance, we're not spending a substantial amount in this from ARPA, that this is extremely impressive and conservative considering the wage adjustments that we did and the new positions. I'm very excited and considering what I suspect as an increase in tax capacity, and as you say, hopefully increased funding from the feds and potentially, the state and potentially the feds, the impacts may not be felt by taxpayers, but time will tell, I guess, when we get into the nitty-gritty here.
So Brady and I had a conversation about this last week, about what these numbers represent versus the levy impact. And so what you see here are increases over last year, or I should say over the current year, right? And we did put the pay increases in place at the beginning of this year. So this only represents an increase over the current year spending, which with the new revenues and county program aid and PILT and so on, the net increase is fairly small. But we used significant fund balance last year to lower the levy. And so this is just a comparison to the current year, but there's still a significant part of the cost burden that has not been put on the levy yet. And so, yes, this is a fairly small net increase over previous year spending, but don't take this to mean that the potential levy impact is going to be in the same neighborhood, because it's probably not.
Understood.
And I would also say that it's quite possible that we might be looking at a levy increase in the high single digits or 10%, depending on how much fund balance we use.
Exactly, and
So-
at least our intention last year was to try to avoid that by spreading things out, addressing our immediate needs, but spreading out that pain or that burden. And so that's where I'm really optimistic about this, is because I feel like with this number, these numbers, this small net increase, that it's a lot more manageable to do that. But, yeah.
And by the time we are ready to put that one page together, we might have some stronger indication from the assessor of what our valuation increases could be.
Mhm.
We might be able to present that at the same time.
I think between.
We'll have that in September for the proposed, because that's required, but hopefully something earlier.
Oh, there's tax capacity, and then hopefully by then we'll hear back from the feds regarding that.
For sure.
So-
The-
Commissioner White, you had your hand up?
No,
No? Okay.
no.
I was going to say, I mean, Ty Blatnick, the outcome of that decision by the Secretary of Agriculture is going to be a really big deal. If it goes our way, it will make this budget cycle significantly easier. So, and I'm not inclined to be real optimistic about that. I mean, it'd be nice if it turned out that way, but I'd rather plan for the worst and be pleasantly surprised.
Absolutely. I would agree.
One of the other funny, Jason Hale walks in right now, but the other funny thing is that the board's original intentions for the $2 million was largely for housing, right? That was, housing, and we just got the budget proposal from the HRA, and it barely touches the 1.3 at this point. We've already done a significant contribution to those efforts, but there's money there that I wasn't planning on, that I assumed is all going to be going towards housing. So to know that we have.
Capital improvement plan?
Yes.
Capital improvement plan?
We have significant costs, whether it's capital improvement plan or the salary adjustment. I feel good that we have these options. We have this flexibility. We have a lot of tools, and doggone it, we have a good administrator. Thank you for your work.
Pretty
Shucks.
amazing to put this all together, and well, we have a lot of work yet to do, so. But thank you for starting us out in a really good fashion and providing you and Auditor Powers with all the numbers that we need to examine.
And if there are additional thoughts or questions about anything that's in this, we'd sure like to hear your feedback.
Oh, one last thing, sorry. When it comes to that one pager, it would be really helpful. I always find it extremely helpful to have that historical perspective to show us where we've been, what our trajectory is like, what could we.
We do have a
Yes,
historian at the
yes,
table, so.
Exactly. But I just wanted to emphasize that again for.
Nice way to put it.
A historical figure.
Very nice.
All right. Well, with that, we will move on to administrator updates.
Yeah, well, I mean, you've heard most of what I've been working on, the CIP, the budget, and then the other big picture item is the strategic plan that we've been working on, have made some really good progress. We're at a point now with the steering committee where we're developing objectives. We've got 3 sort of buckets under which objectives fall, and I won't go into detail today. But we will be giving you an update, hopefully in the near future, as we work on that. We've assigned each of the members of the steering committee, which includes Commissioner White and Commissioner Hawkins, homework in terms of developing those objectives and establishing, measurable key performance measures so that we have a way of measuring our progress toward goals. So that's where we are right now, and we'll be able to share more information about that at a future meeting.
Great. Well, thank you very much. All right. I see that Mike Keyport has entered the room, and how timely, because we're wanting to talk about a request to designate and fund a West End shelter, an emergency shelter. And I'm going to turn it over to Commissioner Storley at this point to kind of kick off this topic.
Okay, thank you. Well, I'm kind of half expecting a supervisor to be here from Lutzen, so anyway, just a little background. Reiterate what I already said a few months ago. After the power outage that we all experienced after the Christmas storm in January, I did discuss with the Lutzen Township supervisors the idea that maybe we could consider turning our town hall into an emergency evacuation center. Not only for the winter, but we also have other emergencies, fires and maybe some catastrophe on Highway 61 or somewhere else, for a place for our residents to go and also visitors who are here, that they know that they can go to a place to be safe for a while. conversation, months go by, and I went to the townships. Deputy Hickson Placer also went to the townships, and for the most part, the other townships, Schroeder and Tofty, are very supportive of it, even monetarily. It's just a matter of trying to figure out, what is needed. We would have access to more cots. I know it was suggested we have 12. Well, that won't go very far if you have a room full of people, but there is other people pitching in. And so the support is there from local people to think about that. Birch Grove has been considered, however, it's a school. So if we have an emergency in the daytime where people have to go, that's really not a viable place because school would be in session unless it would affect the school either electrical-wise or otherwise. So both townships really didn't feel that that was probably a viable place for now. So where are we right now? You received a letter from the deputy clerk in Lutzen, and that was in July 18th. Well, as I just mentioned, more conversations have been ongoing, and we're just to a point now where I think Mike can fill in with some details. I think Commissioner Mills, you mentioned there's a lot of grants and there's a lot of money and there's a lot of stuff floating out there, along with county support, that I think we need to dive into a little bit deeper. So I will turn it over to Mike, and he can kind of talk about what he thinks is available.
Sure. Good morning, Madam Chair, Commissioners, community members. Emergency shelters, of course, are important in any county as well as ours. I think the Christmas prolonged blizzard and power outage has kind of proved the need for that. There is a little more to emergency shelters than you would think. If we're relying on Red Cross help, they have guidelines as to what they want in that shelter, as to space needs, backup power, food service of some sort, showers sometimes. They also ask for a facility use agreement. Currently, the only two I have in the county is one with the Grand Portage Community Center and the other one with the YMCA, that they actually come up and evaluate the facilities and then say, yep, this is an adequate facility. Grand Portage throughout the county by far has the best one in the county. They have 3 kitchens within the building, showers, a lot of space. It's just a perfect shelter. They also have their own supply of cots. Just for the public's information and your information, the county does own a trailer managed by myself and Public Health, and we have all the supplies we could possibly need in there. The cots, all the paperwork, Red Cross paperwork, pillows, blankets. We have a couple small generators that could be used if we ever had to put together a remote shelter. So we do have that in place. The Red Cross also does have cots available, probably at no cost to us. So I have a great relationship with the Red Cross. They attend our regional meetings. The Christmas blizzard, they contacted me before I had an opportunity to contact them. Now, what do you need? We'll be there. That being said, with that, they do want that facility use agreement and a key holder. Sometimes that can be tricky, to have somebody who's going to open the building, who can be there. As in any event, it's ours. It's ours until Red Cross can get here, and our location, of course, it could be a half a day or 4 or 6 hours before they get personnel up here to help us. So we'd be responsible for opening that up. They also recommend and would like trained staff. Currently, we only have 3 staff county employees that are trained, myself and 2 public health employees. Public Health and I was on our mission this summer to meet with them and look at other facilities, not just the Lutzen Town Hall. Birch Grove is on the list. We do have a list. There's several buildings within the county and a handful of churches, 3 or 4 churches that actually are willing to give up their building in an emergency. And a couple of them churches reached out during the Christmas blizzard. So Public Health and I, moving forward, are going to meet as early as next week, we're hoping, and kind of evaluate some other buildings and see how we can work together with Grand Portage is set up the other end of the county in your area. It would certainly be smart to have some equipment down there instead of having to transport it in a blizzard or some other event. So I think that's a great idea. As far as funding, I reached out to our hazard mitigation grant department last week. They got back a hold of me yesterday, and I did submit your proposal as to what you want to do with that building, and it sounds like it will be eligible for a hazard mitigation grant. Having said that, the funding, the lady I talked to yesterday, don't know when that'll be released, likely September-ish, maybe into October. But it's a pretty basic grant, being how you had contractors with proposals. It's just grant reporting as the work moves forward as to what got done per your proposal, or if there's anything further you would like to add to that. But generators, there is a generator within that plan. That gets a little bit tricky over the years. They used to just about give away generators, and it came down to, well, then who's going to maintain it? Agencies were going back asking for more money to maintain a generator, and the state says, no, we give you money for a generator, you figure it out. So that might have to be added to the grant application, just a stipulation that we as Cook County will maintain that generator and other parts of that building. So I think that's kind of where we're at. I think it's a good idea, and any other buildings that we can have on hand. Again, I think the Christmas blizzard, I think a facility would have been used. Grand Portage did open a warming center, and Public Health and myself considered opening one here within the county. The social worker that was on call did house just a handful of people in the local hotels over that Christmas, and as opposed to opening an actual shelter. So that just happened to work out in that event. That's what I can bring you today. If you have any questions, I'll be willing to try to answer.
Question I have, Mike, is do we need to establish a facility use agreement? Or is that something that the township or the town hall does on their own?
That should likely come through me, simply because I have the good contacts. And what they'll do, Red Cross is great. Like I say, I have a great relationship with them, and they'll come up here anytime and look at the facility with your supervisor and make suggestions and say, hey, this might be a worthy idea. So it's something I can certainly make that ask and have them come up and take a look at your facility and your proposal.
And is there any board action you need in order to do that?
No.
Okay. Wanted to just clarify that. Administrator.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. I'm glad that you mentioned Public Health and Human Services, because they do have a primary responsibility for standing up emergency shelters when the need arises. And so I just wanted to, I'm glad to hear you say that they're going to be accompanying you on visiting sites. It's going to be really important moving forward that they be part of the decision-making process in terms of what happens in the West End. So thanks for coordinating that.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, it's been on our radar ever since the Christmas blizzard, as I labeled it. So.
Any other questions? Commissioner Mills.
I'm surprised this hasn't come to fruition in the past. This seems like a really important aspect to our public safety and our public health, and to have only Grand Portage and Grand Marais being the two emergency shelters, I can easily see the need for Lutzen, and I could even see the need for up the trail in the middle of a blizzard. And so I don't know, if that's on your shoulders or if it's on the trail folks' shoulders, but I hope that those discussions are happening a little bit.
I kind of anticipated that may happen, that the Gunflint Trail folks may want to follow suit with something similar with one of their community centers. And that's all well and fine, but we can work through that without a problem too. So.
All right.
I think it's a very reasonable ask, and the fact that there's partners willing to team up on it is all the better, so, thank you.
So we just had a supervisor, Lolly Cooper, come in. And Lolly, we've been discussing the Lutzen Town Hall, and we have good support from Emergency Manager Mike Keyport. Is there anything you'd like to address to the board about your concerns about having it there?
And Lolly, please come forward so you can speak into the microphone and the public can hear you. Thank you.
I just realized I left my glasses, just so I don't have my glasses.
I can read for you if you want.
That might have to happen.
I've got some cheaters here.
Oh, cheaters is all I need.
Oh,
You're in good company.
Wow, I was like, oh my God, I left my glasses. All right, so you obviously know that we're looking to put in an emergency shelter on the west end, and we do have the support of Schroeder and Tofty. And some of the reasons we'd like to put that there is the power outage we had last year. There were a lot of people stranded, and so we're looking for a generator because we have electric heat. But we'd also like to put in some heat that isn't electric, so some gas heat to keep it warm. We're looking at approximately $30,000 to do this. We have some donations of beds, but we're also going to get an extra 12 cots, so I think it's going to be about 24. And let's see, we know that the west end, the closest one, is the YMCA. That's a lot of travel in a blizzard, so we're kind of centrally located for the people on the west end at our fire hall there in Lutzen. We have toilets, we have a full kitchen, we have a nice sized room. Our firefighters are there 24 hours when there is a power outage, so the emergency services. And also for the people whose electricity go down but they have heat or we cook, they can come there to charge their cell phones or whatever needs to be charged. ARPA funds could be used towards the emergency shelter and safety for the citizens. And that's basically what I have.
I think the township has had some good discussion about this, and Mike Keyport is giving us a lot of good information. I'm wondering, Mike, if maybe you could come before the township meeting in August and kind of lay out some of your suggestions and how we can start working together for, like, the facility agreement and that type of thing?
Yeah, for sure, I'd be more than willing to do that, yeah.
Okay, I'll remind you when the meeting is.
Yep.
It's on a Tuesday, of course.
Third Tuesday of every month. So.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'll just kind of reiterate, there may be some hazard mitigation funding. I can likely get a hazard mitigation grant to pay for that. Most of it, there's likely will be a small match. So if some of the work could be donated or donations to make up for that match, possibly. So,
Yeah.
but I'll have more details on that
Okay,
coming up. So.
sounds great.
And I like the idea that you're looking at other possibilities around the county too, just because we don't know what kind of events are going to happen. I think we just need to, that event at Christmas was the one that said, oh boy.
Yeah.
And you talk to old timers and they say, wow, electricity was out for 4 or 5 days back in the 40s and 50s, and, they survived. But we have different events and circumstances and ways of living today that's totally
Well, and I think your point, Commissioner Storley, about we're putting people in a position where an event occurs, like a power outage, and we're thinking about not only our citizens, but our visitors, and that's a really good point that you brought to our
Well,
attention.
I know for myself, when the power was out at my house for 3 days, and I live in a trailer, I slept in a sleeping bag that went to 40 below zero and was unable to cook. So I do see the need for something on our end to help us out.
Absolutely. Well, I'm appreciative of the direction that this is going. It looks like the hazard mitigation grant is a great possibility, a really strong possibility, and Mike Keyport will work with you on that and also attend that meeting that you have for the township in August. So I think that's a good direction to head. Commissioner Mills.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you all for presenting. The only concern that I have is about that generator maintenance. I wouldn't want, I understand that the state or FEMA or whoever is not willing to pay for that, but I'd be really cautious of having our county staff be the ones maintaining that generator. I would hope someone in Lutsen, would be doing that. And I don't know if we need an agreement for that, but that's just knowing how far they have to go already and, a lot of those maintenance issues, so.
Absolutely. Commissioner White.
Out of Duluth, we've had a couple of clients that they have whole house generators, and the company that they bought the generators from, Generac, or I don't remember what they were, they have also an annual maintenance program where they come up once a year and check to make certain that everything works, and we did a house in Lake County, and then out in Hovland, and everywhere, on Highway 61 east of town, that they come up once a year, and it wouldn't just, they have a number of places they come to check the viability of the generators, so, and then they fix whatever needs to be fixed.
Sure.
And I can find out the name of that company if you can't
Yeah,
find it
that's
somehow.
kind of where the state doesn't want to get into a long, they have a grant period and they'll get us our funding, and when the project is done, that's the end of it for them. So that's where they don't want to get into a long,
Sure.
down the road program like that, but maybe the township.
But the
could-
township
The
might.
township.
Right,
could.
with
Correct.
with
And
the,
our township would very much maintain it and get somebody to check it out.
and it's not
We're-
that expensive. I mean,
Well-
it's, to have it taken care of every year.
It's pretty much like any other piece of equipment we would have that we need to maintain, and we do a pretty good job of maintaining our equipment.
All right. Well, Commissioner Storley, thank you for bringing this item forward. It looks like we have a good action plan with Mike Keyport attending the township meeting and looking at that hazard mitigation grant. So thank you very much. Commissioner Mills.
So considering the grant opportunities, are we thinking that we don't need to necessarily designate any of our ARPA dollars at this point, or is it good to have a placeholder in our budget for that, in case we don't get the grant, or I'm just trying to think. I want to make sure that this has the support that it needs.
When I talked to the state yesterday, they were pretty positive
Oh,
that
okay.
this was a very eligible,
Sure.
because emergency shelters are within our hazard mitigation plan.
Okay.
Right.
And if it wasn't, if we didn't have that in there, it would not be eligible.
Right.
Thank you.
All right. Well, thank you much, and thank you for coming. We appreciate it.
Thanks. Yeah, sure thing.
We aim to please.
Thanks a lot.
All right.
Thank you for coming, Supervisor Lally. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, at this point in our agenda, we'll move on to item 11, employee concerns, commissioner concerns, and updates. Let's start with Commissioner White.
I have no concerns. Yep.
Want to do an update on maybe the community health improvement planning that we attended?
Oh, yes. Oh, yeah, that was quite a room full. There were This was held at the community center. It was a hybrid thing, a hybrid meeting, and there were discussions. Andrea Orris pretty much just take the floor in all the activities she's been involved with for healthy housing and active living pursuits. The general theme, I feel, is mental health in all operations across the board, adults and children's mental health. So it was a very good sharing opportunity to see all the folks. Public health was there, and Grace Grenager did a presentation. And this county has a lot of resources and a lot of people focusing on trying to help our community members remain healthy. Remain healthy, and then if you're not healthy, they'll try to help you to get healthy. So it was a good group. It was a good conversation, and you should feel pretty assured, even though we don't have a hospital, that if you really have a problem, you'll get on a helicopter and go down the road. There's a lot of good services in this county available.
And I guess I would just add that there was a lot of discussion around the social determinants of health and how that tied in with mental health, and housing was the number one thing that was brought up in our discussion. Also, a great discussion on childcare and on the need for transportation in our county. So, very good discussion.
And then also about Narcan and those trainings and the serious effort to get that information out to all community members, and the trainings for people to administer for people in need. So, I feel I do not know what other counties are doing, but it seems like we're pretty proactive in some cases. So,
All right. Well, thank you. Commissioner Mills, any updates?
I don't think I have any updates. I've been gone with family for a good while here, and so just a lot of catching up. Attended a webinar yesterday regarding the new cannabis laws, and I don't think I got any new information from that, just because I've been involved in a lot of the AMC discussions. But I thought it was a very good webinar, and for anyone, it's recorded too, so if anyone wants a briefing, we can access that. That was through Mitchell Hamlin Law Center, and put on by lawyers with an emphasis on public health. So it's an interesting take on things there. So, but aside from that, I think I've been checked out more or less for the last week or so. That's my update.
Great. Commissioner Storley.
Well, yesterday we were able to join NACO with Mary Jo McGuire being nominated and sworn in as the new president of NACO, so I'll get to see her a few times when I meet with the group. That was kind of cool. I wasn't expecting it, and then all of a sudden it popped up on my phone. It's like, whoa, that was great. Just another report from ARDC at our meeting last week. They're doing their budget also at Arrowhead Regional Development Commission, and they're looking at a little increase in our levy, which we pay in to support all the different services that they provide, and they're looking at a 3% increase. And we are the smallest contributor out of all the counties, so I don't think it'll be a huge increase, but that's being discussed right now at that end too. So just heads up on that.
All right, great. Thank you. Well, to follow up on Commissioner White's remarks about Narcan and naloxone training, our safety committee here for the county met just yesterday and has a little over a dozen employees that are going to be trained in first aid, AED training, and then the Narcan and naloxone will be an extra portion they can take along to the end of their day, but they will do a combination training where some of their training will be online and then some will be in person. And that's being coordinated between Jana as a member of our safety committee and Cook County Higher Ed. So we're really excited to continue to train our staff and give them an opportunity to help the public if the need arises. I've continued to attend a lot of Lake Association meetings, one a week. The last one was the Poplar Lake Area Association, and they just wanted to express their gratitude to our highway engineer, who is on vacation this week, for the striping that's being done at the end of the Gunflint. You can actually see the middle line and those
edges.
lines on the edges. So they're really excited that that work has been done, and appreciative of the safety stanchions, the little lime green stanchions mid-trail that have slowed people down. They did bring up a concern, which I shared with Tim Nelson, our Director of Land Services, regarding vacation rentals. There seems to be some questions about what is the appropriate level of density for vacation rentals in a certain area. The area we were discussing at their meeting was Voyager Point. So anyway, I did share that with him, and I imagine when the vacation rental group gets together again in January, that may be one of the topics that they discuss. And we continue to move forward in personnel with all our job descriptions and classifying and grading those. And then we had a very good airport meeting last Thursday. The 75th anniversary of the airport is coming up, so doing some planning around that. And I feel like I need to go down in the basement and look for meeting minutes. We're trying to find out who were all the commissioners back in 91 and 92. And we've been doing some research through the Minnesota Historical Society, looking for photographs, situations of crashes, just a very broad history of aviation here in Cook County and what all has been done. So we're hoping to have a short presentation for that event that we'll put together. And then one of the things that came up, which ties in very much with the needs that we have in the county attorney's office, is as we're going through and updating things for the master planning process, we've had this very informal agreement that the road, Skyport Lane, is plowed by the county, and all the residents and businesses out there have an easement, but there is no formal legal agreement. So that is something that will be worked on in the next few months, so that we have that piece in order. I don't think anything is going to change, but getting that in writing is a really important thing to do. So those are my updates. I do have one question. Have we had any follow-up from the DNR on our surface water ordinance?
That is still pending,
Okay,
yeah. So-
all right. I'm counting the days. We're getting close to that 120-day mark when
Yeah.
they have to respond, so.
Yeah, August 20th, I believe is the
All
deadline.
right, great. All right. Any other items for the good of the order? We have some correspondence. A letter came in to the county board about subordinate government service districts. I've just written a response on behalf of the board to those property owners. We have our sales tax comparison through the May. And with that, is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Commissioner Mills. Is there support?
Support.
Thank you, Commissioner Starley. We have a motion and support. Anything further? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Our meeting is adjourned. Thank you all.